Welcome to another edition of the Bandwagon podcast, but this edition is the jump off episode. So this is where I answer some of your questions and also some of the things that I've made a note of over the past couple of months. So this is my confession. I've really struggled over the last couple of months with loads of things going on, life events, illness, a little bit of motivation if I'm telling the truth. And so I thought I needed to kind of release everything onto this episode, but I needed actual support. So today, I'm joined with somebody who I recently connected with, and we just kind of hit it off. She is such a pioneer in North America, and when I say North America, I'm classing the US and Canada as kind of one because anything anything that way, it's all the same to me. So that's a really bad stereotype, but yeah. Um, and I will kind of I'll let her do her own introduction, but she's sort of the co-founder of Punjabi Beats Co. And a lot of your are you founder or co-founder?
Founder, yeah.
Founder. Okay, there you go. So founder of Punjabi Beats Co. But of all the kind of content that you see across the pond, some way, shape, or form, internationally, Jessie has got her mittens on it. So without further ado, welcome to Jessie to this episode of the Jump Off.
Thank you so much, Ricky. It's so great to be here.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it because I just thought sometimes when you do when I do an episode where it's just a solo one, I'm just looking into a camera and I'm just going off and off. And I always think of one person who would actually look at the listen or watch the episode back, and it's my boa. And I recently lost my big boa over the last couple of months, and so I know like she was always very classy, very um, always took pride in the way she looked and always thought about it. My young boa is like my older sister, who is absolutely ruthless, who just replies so cold to everything that I put up on Insta. So I always have that kind of image in the background of when I'm speaking into the camera and raising a topic, she's always saying, so. She actively goes out and says, do you listen to his podcast? It's shit. It's boring. So like I don't need any haters of that. I've just got the best and worst critic just going around. So I really appreciate you coming on this bit, Jessie. So just for those people out there, can you just justify or the crap attempt that I was trying to introduce you to and just give it a little bit more of your touch to it?
For sure. So my name is Jessie Sidhu. You may also know me as Jessie Brar, which was my name before marriage. But over the past decade, I've had a long career working with the South Asian community around the world in many different places. So I started off in mental health and I started the Mental Health Spotlight, and we shared a lot of stories from people around the world that were struggling with their mental health, just to showcase that this was something that does affect our community and something we really needed to talk about. But I've also equally always been passionate about drama, dance, the arts, and culture. And for me, those two worlds have always kind of gone hand in hand. And so for the past few years, I've been working with organizations like Brown Girl Magazine, Pop Shift, 5X. Like you said, in North America, pretty much any magazine that we've got talking about arts, culture, and music in the South Asian space, I've written an article for or been a part of at some point in time. And now I'm really melding those two places together, talking about things in the Punjabi community that are happening, and especially in our arts and culture community, to see that really it's all related. We're such a small community as Punjabis. We all come from the same place. We may not have the same religion or same background, but as a diaspora, there's so much we can connect on. And I really think music is that connector. And so I love being able to go into these spaces, have conversations. And like you said, if there's something going on in North America, I've probably got my mitts in it somehow. And I'm excited to meld these worlds because I think right now we're in this place where there's a global Punjabi movement, especially in music. It's not just about being from the UK or from North America anymore. It really is how are we all as Punjabis coming together to celebrate how far we've come.
All right, hot take here now because obviously you've just put it really eloquently there. And sometimes I shift in my opinion of whether I think something's going ahead, something's going well, or something's bad. Okay, so the first topic that I want to raise with you is the state of Punjabi music. Yeah. Is it booming or is it busting?
Honestly, in my opinion, I think we're getting to a critical point where this is where we decide if it's going to be booming or busting. Because I think for a long time, our music has it's become kind of stagnant. We have very similar sounds everywhere. At least here in North America, I find we're talking about the same things. I think music has come so far from being a place where you connect, you tell stories, and you really learn from people's experiences, more into being kind of this money grab. And I think it's not just the Punjabi music industry. I've seen it everywhere, and even especially in Canada, there's famous musicians who are having their concerts and everything canceled because they can't sell out tickets. And what I think is going on in the music industry in general is the fact that post COVID, life is different. There were things that were working. We were having a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun party music. Sidhu was doing really big things. But I think after that, we kind of fell off in a way where I don't know if it was COVID and our trajectory kind of slowed down, or we just found this method. I think honestly, what I see happening in Punjabi music a lot is we're just copying other cultures instead of representing our own, showcasing what we have. I see it a lot, especially in North America. A lot of times we're just copying Black culture, rap culture. We're not really coming up with our own ideas or bringing forward our culture into the space. And I think that's why it's that critical point. Are we going to shift and start showcasing our culture, how it is, and our actual stories that we've lived through? And we're going to make it into something that's important, something that is a movement? Or are we going to keep just copying other cultures? And if we keep copying other cultures, it's probably going to bust because those already exist. Why would you want to make music that already exists? Be innovative, do something different, tell a story of, even right now, of course, like there's so many important things that have happened in Punjab for Punjabis across the world in the diaspora, but I don't think we've really seen that come out in the music yet.
No, I just think that some of these artists are really taking liberties, especially with the audience. And I think they've got to understand that the audience is not stupid. So
Mm-hmm.
when people are canceling these big concerts and saying, I think it was Shub who was talking about there was plane strikes or airport strikes and stuff, and so some of the production couldn't come over on that day. I was like, yeah, but at the same time, you would have had an indication of knowing how many tickets were there, what was being available. You're better off just coming out and just saying, look, we're going to reschedule, we're going
Yeah.
to redo it, but with a better narrative rather than coming out with a lame excuse. Because then what you do then is that you give the ammunition to the audience out there and within those Instagram pages, the social media meme pages, who would run with this story for days on days. So like whoever's kind of advising him with that, I just thought, oh come on, like these are the same audiences who do go to the mainstream or concerts, do spend a couple of £100 on tickets, and do see those same kind of performances, and then they don't give these kind of excuses. It is insulting the intelligence around there, and to keep using the same excuse around, oh, visas are being declined. When you do, let me just give a bit of background for some people out there. When people apply to come and do a show over here, especially with the immigration office here, they get given special codes that are affiliated to the show that they've got to do. If you haven't got that in the first place, why are you advertising your gig to carry on? So again, you are insulting people who are potentially your fans, those people who are going to um, invest in your music, invest in your sound, and that maturity of what you're saying around being at that critical point is massive, because those top 1%ers, your Diljits, your Gurrans, I would actually say that's it between them two, are earning the most amount of money. I would say I would also throw Jazzy B in there in terms of longevity and consistency. But that gap between them and the next tier is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And what's the kind of incentive for people now, especially younger artists who are coming out thinking of the topical kind of songs that they got to sing about? And being honest, I've said it before, the kind of time span a new artist has is probably, if you ain't got a hit in your first 2 or 3 songs, it's down. It really is down. Do you kind of experience that kind of pattern of what I'm saying? Do you experience that in North America or internationally from your experience?
Yeah, I think I agree, especially like you said, like you've got your Diljit and you've got Garnacha, and they're doing great big things, but that's about it. Everyone else is kind of struggling to get there. But one of the things that I've noticed about both of those teams is Garnacha, obviously, like he talks very openly about how much he leans on his wife, and his wife is a very big confidant for him. Diljit has famously been managed by a woman. What I've noticed with a lot of teams, and it's a very Desi culture thing, like the team happens, and especially in the music industry, it's your boys, it's the people you grew up with. You don't have those critical thinkers oftentimes in your team. And I think that's what's really missing. A lot of these teams are being established, and it's great to bring your friends up with you, bring your like people up with you, but you also have to be strategic. And I think that strategic thinking is really what's lacking with a lot of these artists. And they're not thinking about who is their audience, what does my audience want? And those things are also important. There's kind of two ways I see artistry growing: of you either full-heartedly act like yourself, know who you are. I see that in, for example, Raf Sapera. I don't know how Raf does in the UK, but here in North America, everyone looks at Raf and sees that he has an identity, he has a voice. He's done a lot of different types of music, but still, his audience is so well behind him. Same with Telwinder. I see that with he's from LA, North American as well, but he's got that artistry and he's very much himself. And his audience will ride or die for him. But then there's a lot of people who I don't think they know their audience yet. They're just generally reaching for Punjabis. And you have to realize that what being Punjabi is looks very different in the diaspora. Those bigger, there's those old school people. There's old people older who love going to the melas and doing stuff like that still. Then there's this niche audience, I think that's kind of this 30 to 45 who we grew up having more music experiences. There were like daytimer events. There was like clubbing here in Toronto and North America. Maybe not as much in the States, but in North America, especially in Ontario, in BC, there was so many events happening where you'd have very famous singers showing up into the clubs, and you were experiencing this music, and and that's what it was. You were experiencing music. You weren't just simply sitting there and listening to it. And it's very easy to passively listen to music. That's why I think all of these artists, they're getting streams because you put on Spotify, you put it on shuffle, and you let it play while you're driving. But to get people to come to a concert, they have to want to see you. They have to know you. They have to understand what you're about. And I think that storytelling is missing from a lot of artists. That brand, that visual identity is missing. And all of these things that are very critical and strategic, where I don't think they've made the space on their teams for that. Like I said, it's a lot of times it's people that they grew up with, it's the people around them. And there are people in our community, in our industry, that have done this professionally, that have the insights and can bring it in. But I find oftentimes there's a lot of gatekeeping too. Because if you're not in, like you said, if it's not the first 2, 3 songs, then you have a hit, you kind of fall off the map. And there's, I think, so much talent that's going under the rug because they're not getting their numbers. And the people that are getting the numbers, they're not growing because they're not looking at what they actually need to do to get better. They're just doing what they want to do and calling it a day. This could be just my personal take of working in both the mental health world and the music world. Our community has a lot of ego. And oftentimes I think that ego is the part that really sets us back. And I see that you brought up Jazzy B. Like you said, Jazzy B's had this huge career now, almost 30 years, if not more. And he's making a comeback now. Every single thing that's happened in Canada, if Jazzy B was not there this year, it wasn't important. But to be able to do that 30 years later, it's also a testament to the fact that he has his identity, he knows who he is. And that type of visual brand building doesn't really exist in our community, in our culture. So it's translating maybe numbers and money on paper, but it's not translating into in-person experiences.
I think the other bit is I would say Diljit and God are not outliers. They are anomalies. Let's just put them to a side. If you looked at anybody who has been big over the last 30 years within that, their bread and butter was outperforming singing
Hmm.
live, doing weddings, doing parties, doing whatever. And you would see those guys doing big medley, for example, with 100,000 people, 50,000. But then also you're seeing them at your local wedding venue as well at the same time. So they built that fan base, they built that connection with the audience. I think
Hmm.
what there is a risk now is that if you just start singling out saying, I'm only doing festivals, and your record label or yourself or your team, let's put it that way, are buying your views and your follower your following, this false sense of identity, that ego that you were talking about, really inflates the issue of when it starts crashing down and when it doesn't work out. And so what I do see is clever marketing, even with some of the singers you mentioned, and let's say they're booking a club out, or their team's booking a club out, and it's 1,000 capacity. It's not selling tickets. You got 400 people who've bought tickets. You get a venue which holds 500. All of a sudden, the videos that you're going to be seeing, oh, it's absolutely packed out. So that's clever PR, that is, and I
Yeah.
think that's different. That's different to what people are seeing out there, because they know the audio, the production, the imagery, everything's sort of coming together. What I do see, when we talk with Raf, for example, is that a lot of the artists that we mentioned, the older artists, they had strong competition. So there was
Hmm.
a drive to put out quality music all the time, or to change their ideas, or change their tactics, because they always knew there's going to be another album coming the year after.
Yep.
But the competition hasn't sort of kicked on yet. There's a few shoots that are coming up. Raj here. There's a few other guys that within, let's say, True School's camp. He's
Hmm.
a number of students there. We've seen Stephen Sahota. He's kind of started his pathway. There's other singers who are don't come to mind, but that's also an issue. We're not seeing that conveyor belt here, and I think for the first time, I think the UK is a lot further behind in terms of Canada, and I do fear we might see the end of it within the next sort of 10 years within here, because I think those artists who I've just mentioned would rather go to that global market, or actually base themselves abroad, than anything. They'll still have weddings and so on from here, but the risk that you've got here is that um you'll be concentrating on getting wedding music or wedding money, or that performance, rather than pushing it forward. So this year, when we saw JK release his EP coming out, that was kind of 10 years of asking, of getting to there, but he was a victim of his own success, because he was doing so well now, out there with his previous body of work. Now you've seen a new body of work coming out, and you do see a new kind of fire saying, okay, this is where it's going, and where it sort of ends up with. So the next kind of question I want to kind of slightly relate to this was, do you see, in terms of the crossover, the song that I'm going to raise up, what caused controversy over the few months, was MF Gabru by Karan Aujla.
Yeah.
Do you see that as a watershed moment? Because you had half an argument to say, and I did sit in this camp, so I'll put it up there, saying there's actually no need to do that, because when he released it and the video that was around it, individuals and the scenery and the imagery around it, I thought was didn't match with the song, to so to speak, and the vibe. And then the other one, you see the younger generation actually relating to it and saying, "Yeah, this does make sense." So do you see it as a watershed moment, or clash in generations?
I think a little bit of both, because I think it is a clash in generations. Like I would say kind of in that middle where I'm 31. So I can see the older perspective. I also see the Gen Z, Gen Alpha, the younger perspective as well. Like for me, I agree with what you said though. I think when I listen to it as a song, I'm listening to it no visuals, just on Spotify without the MF. I don't like it. Genuinely, it doesn't sound good to me, it doesn't make sense to me, it doesn't flow to me. But when I did watch the song with the music video, I also felt a type of way where I'm like, now I don't know how I feel about using that term with the way you've made the video. And I think that's where I'm seeing this disconnect. Is there is a very one level way of thinking. I don't think a lot of artists are doing deeper levels of thinking and thinking critically about, okay, how does this look? Because you can have the song that's great vocally, and if the video doesn't make sense, you could ruin the whole song. Like everything could go out the window. Like you said, there was this huge controversy, and I feel like the controversy only really started once they released the video. The song was already out, people were vibing with the song, younger generations loving it, video comes out, and then people are saying, wait, this doesn't sit right with me. And I think those people, that's a sentiment that, of course, everyone's allowed to have their opinion, but I can see why that happens. And I agree. I think if they had released that song, if they had MF Gabru, and it was done as a very rock star, poppy, cool video.
Did you change? Just sorry to cut you off there. Did you change your mind when he changed the version? Because I did.
Yeah, I honestly I think changing the version was a bad move.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Either because your intention's been made, and
Yeah.
that's what I actually, in a very weird way, I gained more respect when he actually put it back onto the platforms.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know. I heard a lot of people say maybe it was a PR move that he was trying to garner attention of like putting it on and off and having this controversy of like maybe the controversy was the whole point of having something that's also something that happens in arts and culture. And I think this is what I've talked to a lot of people, and I don't think our audience thought critically. I think people my age and older, we really got into just listening to music to listen to music, whereas younger people, I think, are starting to think a little more critically and say, why are you putting it out? Why is it this way? Because they see other artists in North America, across the world, that have very specific voices that bring something to the table. And it was, if you had like back, even like you said, there's not a lot of competition anymore. Back when there was competition, the big major competition was Sidhu versus Karan. And it was Karan is doing these more like lovey, more songs for that you can play at a wedding, that you can play with your family, where Sidhu was doing more hard hitting issues or songs that were political. And a lot of people kind of bring that back to like Biggie and Tupac, like what their kind of beef was back in the day. And you're right, there's no competition. Karan Aujla and Diljit, they have monopolies. They also are in very similar lanes. And I think that's also why the market is everyone's kind of able to do whatever they want to do, and it doesn't necessarily translate, but it also doesn't matter at the end of the day. Even though there's this controversy, there's this talk, who cares? It's Karan Aujla. He's going to do whatever he wants. Everyone's still going to watch. There's no, and I think I follow Bayant, who does a lot of kind of commentary in the UK, and I really love what he says, but he talked about this as well. But there are no more cultural curators. And I see that I still do a lot of that space in the writing, but writing's not the way where people use that medium anymore. People aren't reading articles to be like, okay, who's hot, who's not. I remember when like I was growing up, even if I wanted to watch a movie, I'd have to like figure out what it was. Like there weren't a lot of trailers unless you caught it on TV. You had to really.
Wasn't that part of the experience, isn't it? It's just like I was shocked. I know this slightly digresses, and I want to come back to this point. But I went to go watch Superman during the holidays, and I was gutted because it was only like a few weeks later they released it straight to digital down, and then I managed to watch this. There's a really great YouTube channel called Screen Crush, and they were talking in there of why this has happened because of the lack of people going to the cinema. Nobody buys DVDs anymore, so that journey of where a project was released twice, so it'd be having a marketing campaign for when it was coming out in cinema, and then there was a massive campaign that when it comes out to DVD, where they could actually generate the same amount of money, or if not more. Where now they only have that one push, and then it goes straight onto kind of digital downloads as well. So I actually saw that within, with some of the kind of the projects that were going on. I just wanted to go back to this, to the creation of Punjabi pop. I got a little bit of an issue with this around it because Punjabi.
I've got issues with it.
Say again?
I've got more than a little issues with it.
Because Where I've tried to do interviews, especially with people within the music industry. I've tried to, and me and Beyond have spoken about this a number of times, and he will be coming on again shortly. I actually can try and get credit with him. I got him on really early in his career, so I was like, he owes me. But um, we we were talking about that if you are a student or you're trying to work out the history of Bhangra, there
Mhm.
are some elements that through some of the interviews that are online and where I've tried is to map some of those individuals of where they've gone there. One, unfortunately, that I couldn't kind of cross over the line was Johnny Z, Stereo Nation Taz. And he is the fundamental pioneer from a UK point of view of the Punjabi pop sound. And I will argue with anybody, and I've had it validated from somebody. I won't mention their name, but if you mention their name, it'll be yep, I agree, and they said it. And to back my point, so what I took was that this rewriting and this revisionism of history also comes with a little bit of danger because the history of the culture is so fragile at this moment. The ecosystem is there. I don't think it needs that space of where because Icky's kind of dominating that scene, so he's done a little bit of kind of Raf's music with that one single, I think it was, and then it went straight into it sounded like continuation into Gurren's work. So I'm really interested to see where the sound goes after this. I think it could be I'm not sure it's a phase because it was always there. It's just been remarketed. What do you think of that?
I agree. I took up a lot of issues with P-pop culture in general. I think my major one is exactly what you're saying, of the fact that this has already existed. It was under a different title. We used to call it urban desi, of like urban desi music. We had it in the UK, we had it here in Toronto, we had it in BC. You have all of these huge artists that changed the game and made Punjabi pop happened before P-pop culture existed. My other issue with P-pop specifically is K-pop already exists. Again, this is what I see a pattern in our music, in what we're doing, is we're just copying. Why would you take something that already exists, change one letter, K-pop to P-pop, and suddenly it's a new thing? It's not.
I think it's what they've done traditionally about for kind of Hollywood to Bollywood.
Exactly. And it is. And I think that's something of, especially just in the world, ever since the digitization of the world, there's obviously benefits where we can do more global work. We can work with people across the pond. You have someone like Icky who's from Toronto, but can work with Wrath. But there's also less competition because whoever's popular is popular. That's what social media has done. I think digitization brings in all these great things. But because of social media, like you said, you could have a 500-person room with 400 people and it looks like it's filled and massive and this is the biggest concert ever, but no one talks about the fact that actually this was supposed to be 1,000 people venue and we had to downsize because we couldn't sell tickets, and this is what's going on. And the music industry in general is glorified so much, not just by our culture but every culture. But you're right, our culture is in this very critical space, and I don't see it in just music. I think it's in everything. Punjabi culture is being erased, and that's not something that anyone talks about. We haven't had a space where, because Punjab's not its own, like it's its own region, but we don't have a country. Even when Punjab got split up, it was split up by religion, and you had three, four different religions that were living in the land of Punjab. And now you have Punjabis who are trying to move forward and doing it without recognizing what's gone on before, who kind of paved the path for them. And I see this in not just, like I said, not just in music, in a lot of different sectors where people are coming up and claiming to be the first. And like you said, that act is actually erasure. That's erasing the fact that there's been so many people who put in work. And I have a friend, her name's Nisha Hoti. She works in PR, so she always comes up with the most amazing ways to kind of put things in a concise way. But she said, this isn't the journey. This isn't the movement we're in right now. This is the moment. The movement and the journey already happened. And when she said that to me, I was like, "Oh my God, Nisha, you're so right." Because we've been having this Punjabi movement for decades now, ever since I would say the 90s, especially. It started, of course, in Punjab when people migrated, they migrated to the UK first, and that was really where that big music movement, like you had, like you said, there was Taz, you had the Thummies, you had like you have Hero Group, and then you had H Thummy come after that. There's the actual history that lives in the UK for this pop music. You actually saw, like, my favorite example is the Thummies, because you have someone like Balvinder Thummy, who was part of Hero Group, and then his son H Thummy was a pillar of what I would call Punjabi pop, and he still gets those bookings. And like you said, you've got like the Juggy D's, you had Jay Sean, who also, if Jay Sean's not the creator of Punjabi pop and Rishi Rich and that kind of camp, then what are we talking about? And then even then, if you want to move past the UK, you come here, you had people like Culture Shock, you had there was the Bills, we had so many small pockets of people in Toronto, in the kind of this side as well. Intense is a producer. I would argue Intense does kind of every style of music, but Intense introduced pop and trap and all of these sounds to the culture. So I do find it difficult to have these conversations about Punjabi pop, because I love Karan Aujla, huge Karan Aujla fan, love what he's doing. He's putting it on the global map, but I do take issue with the fact that he's putting it on the global map and taking claim for a lot of things that aren't solely his. He definitely changed the game, but he didn't change the game alone. People paved the path. Like, without Jazzy B, for example, there would be no Karan Aujla. If we didn't have those people that made these small movements, and I remember I actually had a chance to interview Jazzy B at the Junos, and to me it was baffling that Jazzy B was at the Junos. He's had a 30-long-year career, and this was his first time being recognized on a Canadian stage like this. But during his interview, he said, "It was folk before I made it funky." And my jaw dropped. I had to let go of everything in my hands. I just had to sit there and stare. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, how is no one talking about this? And it's stuff that I think we have conversations in between ourselves and with our friends. And I know you and I, this is what we talk about all the time, of being like, we map the history. This is how Ricky and I basically became friends. We started talking, and we're like, oh, we've been just mapping this in our heads, but it does need to exist somewhere else. And that's really what I started Punjabi Beats Collective for, is these conversations, this history has been erased, and we need someone to go back to archive this and put it down on paper, because even in a few years, Karan Aujla is also going to phase out. What happens after that? Are we going to become like a movement that is here to stay? We saw it with Latin music. Latin music could have phased out. You've got people like Bad Bunny now, and I think Bad Bunny's been my kind of ideal example of what I think Punjabi culture and Punjabi music should lean into. Is Bad Bunny, he didn't do a world tour. He was from Puerto Rico. He made everyone come to him. He's like, no, this is my community, my culture. And he talks a lot about it. Of, he did that because, of course, in the US right now, there's a lot of ICE raids happening. And he's like, I didn't want to risk the people that are coming to my concerts who are listening to Latin music, because, of course, a lot of those people are either of Latin heritage, some other sort of immigrant heritage. And of course, there's masses that are listening to it. But he made it so his music, his culture, his people were at the center. It's not just about Bad Bunny anymore. It's about his people and his culture. And that's something that I don't think anyone else has really done before. And he's a perfect example of how Karan Aujla, Diljit, all of these large artists could be using their privilege, because that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. These large artists, they have power and privilege. All of the artists who have kind of made a name for themselves have had that. And this is also something that Punjabi culture hasn't done. In the UK, we used, and you still do, you said, like, you've still got True School, you've got like these ustads that are teaching. We don't really have that in North America. We don't really have ustads who have these backgrounds, who have been in the industry, who known the good and the bad, teaching the next generation of, hey, this is how we preserve our culture, this is how we bring it forward. Even people who are getting contracts now, like, I know there's musicians that are going to get contracts, people are going to get offered contracts, but how are you protecting your culture? This is what happened to the Black community. Are we going to sit there and learn from them? I watch every documentary that's going on about hip-hop culture, R&B culture, how the Black community was taken advantage of by Hollywood. And are we just going to let the same thing happen?
It's happened. We've had the back catalogs of some of the biggest UK record companies already been taken over by Universal's, Warner, Dubai companies, whatever. And so it's already been kind of I don't know whether it's kind of brown washed in terms of like being put into that way. Mark sound rights, music rights to artists, or where it is to lyricists, to producers out there are being lost or being rewritten. That's another conversation for another day. You talked about the ustads, and I remember we had I had and Haya on here, and the likes of the old producers, for example, could actually play the instruments that they were actually putting on tracks. And having 20-year careers just working on instruments, Sukshinder Shindar, for example, playing the instruments on his songs. And you had that old school versus the computer producers who are using Splice and using all these sample kits and making it. And now you've got now I was, funnily enough, today I was like, I don't think people in the UK in the Bhangra industry should say that they're producers. I think that they should say that they're kind of digital producers. There's a
Yes,
difference
sound
within that.
engineer.
Yeah, and so that the Ustad thing is a major issue because we are having a lack of youngsters learning traditional sort of Bhangra instruments, let's say. I mean, I've been I'm not too far out of the capital of Bhangra in the UK of Handsworth, and I'm struggling to get a teacher or one-to-one classes for my son.
Yep.
And I give a shit about this industry, and I'm finding it difficult, to kind of fit with the scheduling of what's going out there. And I spoke to one famous percussionist, Gubsy. I'll name him because he's a lovely guy. Gubsy. He came out, and I met him recently, and I was talking to him. I go, I want to get my son playing the doorknobs, and he goes, bro. He goes, I'll be honest with you, you're gonna have to use YouTube. And I thought, is that where it's got to? Is that where the Ustad and student relationships got to, of where? And he's right, because he's got his kind of schedule and all the things that are going on, and there's not enough money in this whole that industry, that ecosystem, for it to kind of work. But then you starve the next generations and of it. And I really want to move on. I want to get to the next point because you touched on it, and I didn't want to divert it. I want to kind of have its own segment, which is around. You talked about culture when we first started, and you talked about arts. I've got this real pet hate of mine at this moment, which is about how artists, soon as they are perceived to go into mainstream or the crossover, are so picky and choosy of which people that they want to drag up with them, or completely negate brown media, for example. And I think that you're actually are cutting the rungs off ladders that have helped to get you there, but also making sure that you're gatekeeping, that nobody else can climb up with you behind it, because we should be having many more breaking border festivals, and we'll come up to that later. We should be having a lot more articles and magazines going on, or writers. We should have more podcasters. We should have all this. But if you're not getting the likes of the Legit coming down and starting off with a TikToker with 10 views or something like that, if you see Ed Sheeran, for example, I have him as the kind of the gold standard. He'll be walking in the street with a busker, does what he wants, gives everyone a chance, and he's beloved, isn't it? There's a difference between loved and beloved, and I think that we're missing a trick there, where those guys are at the top. And again, we've mentioned him 100 times, but Jazzy did the same with me on here. But Jazzy has done it with consistently with everyone, because he knows how the ecosystem needs to be fed. And I really think some of those guys are missing out. I mean, I've said a lot there.
No, I 100% agree. And I think that's exactly where it is. There's no collaboration. And what I see is everyone looks at each other as competition, but there's also no real competition because no one's actually trying too hard. And one of the things, like you said, of Ed Sheeran, I'm a huge Ed Sheeran fan. And even from the way I grew up listening to music, I grew up listening to everything. I'm not kidding. From screamo music to Punjabi to Sufi to Qawwali to Muhammad Rafi. Like I listen to absolutely everything that is going on and out there. And one of the major things that I did was I was a huge boy band girly. Listened to a lot of One Direction growing up and all of these things. And they were actual fans because they connected with their fans. You would see they were interacting with them. Back then it was Twitter, of now called X, but sending messages back and forth. Ed Sheeran, I think you're right, is the one person who till this day gives his fans so much. And that's why Ed Sheeran could say tomorrow he's doing a concert and it will be sold out. People will still show up. People will be there because he has that relationship with his fans. If a fan knows he's in town, like you said, it doesn't matter how much money it costs. It doesn't matter what it is. I remember I was 15, 16, begging my mom, being like, I know how much money this is. I will do everything for free. I'll do anything you want for months. Just let me go to this concert. And that's how me and my friends grew up. We grew up going to these concerts. And so I am very diehard for the experience of artistry and for the community of artistry. And I think that's what's missing. And that's what you see in, like, for example, I know we talk about Jazzy all the time, but Jazzy's relationship with Kuldeep Manikji, of like, he had an ustad that was so close to him. I see it with Amin Hair as well. Amin Hair still mentoring people and all of these things, but we don't talk about it. Our community is very notorious for only people giving people their flowers when they've made it. And there's no point of that. They've already made it. They don't need the flowers. Diljit doesn't need any more flowers. Karan doesn't need any more flowers. They've made it. What we need to be doing is supporting the new emerging artists who are trying to do something different, supporting artists that are even coming back. Like, see, there's so many artists, like you said, that were taken advantage of in the 90s, early 2000s, that had huge music, but they didn't see the money. They didn't see the value. They didn't get this large following because that type of stuff didn't exist back then. And I do think as a Punjabi artist, you have a responsibility to your community. If you are making money off the community, if you're relying on this community to give you love, to keep your career going, you have a responsibility to that community to give them something back. And what that looks like, it could be, for example, like a Breaking Borders festival like Garan did. Or there's, of course, these foundations. But at the end of the day, what I've realized in the Punjabi community especially is we are all artists at the end of the day. I don't think there's a single Punjabi that I've ever met that doesn't have art in their soul, whether it's drawing, dancing, singing. I thought all the time with the way my family interacts with each other. Even for me, I went to an arts high school. I went to a specialized drama program for all of high school because my nana, my mom, everyone is very art specific. As soon as I was 18, nope, arts aren't an option. That's not how you make a living. There's no support. There's no support for artists. So you get in this weird space where you have people who might have a lot of passion, but they get burnt out because they're not getting the support. And the people who have the power goes to their heads and they don't want to work with other people. I've heard it a lot. I don't know what the UK space is like, but I know in the North American space, I've heard so many times there are one or two people who are like, let's have like a camp. Let's get everyone together. Let's, have these places where, just like the white community does, that if anyone's watching Netflix, there's a whole TV show on it called Building the Band. There's another one, I think it's called Hitmakers, of the songwriters that get together. There's actual industry standards on how you do this as a community, but our community refuses to do that.
No, our community, and I'll say that, like, openly, well, not openly, they all secretly hate each other.
Yes, that's it. It is. It's not open. It's secret.
Yeah. So it's the false, the fakeness of like, oh yeah, he's my brother, blah blah blah. But as soon as a booking comes in, the undercutting this, I call it a marriage of convenience that's happening. They need each other, but they don't like each other. So they're just there for the sake of the kids. Let's just put it that way. Which is, the kids are the clients that are coming in around it. I just want to move it on because this summer I've had this year I've had a really, really good music sort of experience. I went to go see Oasis. Mm-hmm. I had one of the best times of my life, and that was an experience, like one of the best musical kind of experiences that I've ever had. I went to go see Coldplay as well. again, a different kind of vibe. The production on that was just amazing. And so when we come into like the festivals, I want you to kind of just give everybody your take on the festival scene over your side, especially kind of like with 5X, for example, and then going into kind of breaking borders, because breaking borders came with so many different so much baggage, and I did put out a post on there because from to give um Live Nation, Gov Catalyst, all these guys, their props. They took a risk and putting together that people have tried before, and financially, reputationally, branding wise, they went out on a limb and they made the deal, worked it out with Malta, put it on, and then we've had the horrific scenes of what's going on in Punjab from a timing wise.
Yeah.
It was just tragic from all sides, and there's no words for me to say, that could kind of justify some of the experiences of what's going on there, or narrate the experiences of what's going on. Um, and I said that it was a teachable moment for some of those artists that were around, who took the opportunity to have a younger audience, teach them about the culture, the arts, the politics that's happening out there. And so it was a merging of kind of ideology and thinking at that point, understanding that there'll be a large amount of people under the influence, there'll be a large amount of people doing other bits, but you still use your platform in the right way. And I think that came across very, very well, especially from the earlier narrative where they said that it was just so many guys there compared to girls, and girls were getting um, this kind of kickback really online of what was happening. But it was interesting to see as the days went on, it was almost sorted out between itself within the community of kind of regulating it the way it was. So that was kind of our first experience of having that from there. From your opinion, from what you've seen and experienced around how it dealt with topics and how it's put together and the performances, you guys in terms of North America are more a little bit more, I would say a little bit more experienced in this kind of culture way of workshops and putting things together. What was your take on it?
Yeah, I think it was such a unique opportunity. It's the first time it's been done on that scale. And that's what I've seen in North America. We have a lot of these smaller festivals. Of course, 5X has been around for a really long time. We had Calgary, or Stampede Mela, sorry, in Calgary this year. What Bitsy Fest has existed in Toronto for a long time, and all of these like smaller festivals. And we have great crowds that come in, and then, and it becomes an annual thing. What I noticed with Breaking Borders is it was the first time we were able to have those critical conversations. Like I myself, I grew up going to a lot of festivals that were non-Punjabi because we didn't have Punjabi festivals back then. But I went to like Dreamville Festival by J. Cole. I've gone to OVO Fest by Drake. I've done other EDM festivals in LA and San Francisco, these type of things. And a festival is supposed to be a community experience. And I think that is something that Breaking Borders delivered. And like you said, there was talks about, oh, these girls, what are they wearing? But also a lot of, you had people who were very vocal and talk back of, why do you care? That should not be the conversation. There's much more important things going on. Why are we talking about girls and what they're wearing to a festival in Malta? It's hot out. It's let people wear whatever they want to wear. That's not an important conversation anymore. And I think that's what the younger generation is really bringing to the table. The younger generation, they only talk about things if they're important. If they're not important, they don't care. And that's something. I have a sister who's 9 years younger than me, so I really get to learn that from her. But when they're in their 20s, and I saw also one of my favorite, I think, groups right now is the Johnny Forever team. They have been doing these very curated experiences that are super safe, that are very Punjabi oriented, and are just about having fun and showing up and being yourself. You can wear what you want, wear your culture to the table. I know they also did JK's EP when it came out, the listening party for that. And I saw Johnny following their journey at Breaking Borders. I saw how the community was reacting to them, because it is the people who run it are younger. They're in their 30s or 40s. And I think that we talked a little bit about this cultural clash before, or sorry, the generational clash. And I think that's where we're kind of seeing this new generation starting to step up. You do need the Gov, Catalyst, etc., those type of teams to put these on to showcase proof of concept. Like this does work. Now that you've had Breaking Borders, everyone around the world can see how many Punjabis showed up. If other festivals start to add in a Punjabi act, we've seen it at Coachella, we've seen it at other places, having a Punjabi act will bring these people to the table, people who haven't gone to concerts like this before, who haven't experienced music like this. And I think once our community starts to experience music like this and see that there's a different way to be about it, you don't have to be drunk all the time. Like most of the time we listen to music is at our weddings, which is also, like you said, heavily under the influence a lot of the times, or driving, which is very passive. We don't really hang out with our friends and listening to music anymore, which used to be a really big thing when CDs and all that type of stuff was around. And I think Breaking Borders and festivals is that new wave. I think that's how we're going to bring back seeing music as an experience, seeing this as a place for more than that. And one of the things I think I would have loved to see from Breaking Borders is more of those conversations. Of course, a lot of the artists had those on stage, but having curated spaces. And I think this is something that a lot of North American festivals do. And this was my favorite thing about, for example, at Dreamville, was they had sit down talks. They had Boy Wonder, for example, a huge producer here in North America, sit down and talk to their festival organizers. And it was open space. Anyone who was at the festival could attend. You could just grab a seat, listen to him talk, and learn from him. And like we said, ustads aren't really existing anymore. And I think festivals are kind of that way that maybe we can fill the gap. Maybe we need to have festivals that embed more conversation into them, more experience, not just having a stage and people getting on stage singing, which is also wonderful. We haven't had that in a really long time anyways. So that's been great. But I think the next step for them really would be of how are we going to make this something that's more robust? I think the other thing I know we talked about this a little bit is Breaking Borders this year. I can't think of a single Punjabi person or singer who wasn't there. That's popular right now. Like there's no one else. And I think Sukha was originally on the roster and then wasn't on it for a while. He's the only one where I'm like Sukha and AP, I guess, were the only two that kind of
What
didn't
they're
make it.
talking about at the moment is talking about breaking borders in Mexico.
Yeah, I think
For
that was really good.
for next year, because I think this year was more about bringing kind of the European
Yeah.
market within there. Mexico will be the next one, so I think I might have to go there. I'm a bit. I might have to come in the professional capacity because you can't be that old uncle walking around a little bit, 'cause I think that was happening because I mean we were planning. It was loosely mentioned in our WhatsApp group, like shall we go? Shall we go? And then when we saw the footage to start off with, that it was all kids there. And we were like, oh my God, this could go tragically bad if we were just too old. I think I might have to just take my bandwagon actual microphone really in a
Yeah.
professional capacity.
And I think actually we touched on this a little bit before, but I think that's the other thing that's missing is music festivals are great and the experience and the audience experience is great. But like we were talking about, having media included, having
Mm.
podcasts, etc., included in a professional capacity. I just worked at a music festival here on the island a little while ago. And there's a huge difference when you have a communications team, a PR specialist who is helping support that media and that story during the festival,
Yeah.
because you want podcasters there. I saw that there was definitely a lot of social influencers and people who have social media followings, but I didn't really see any sort of traditional media that was invited to talk about the festival. And I think that's a really kind of sad part of missing gap of
But
organizations that have
it,
these reporters. You should have brought them in to
yeah,
promote for next year.
exactly. And I think it's, like spinning it, it is year one. They would
Yeah,
have, as a team, they would have learned a lot of lessons of saying, okay, moving it forward, this is what we would do. This is how it would get along. And also the thing about how a lot of media works together. So even
yeah.
though it's the one story of how it's kind of spun out and where it's pointing through, what else do you think is what else do you think is needed to kind of push it to the next level? So, like, for example, based on the kind of current roster, you could probably ring out three more kind of ones from there. But if we've got a lack of a production line of people from the UK, what's the production line looking for kind of North America of a newer talent coming through?
Yeah, of new talent. I think there's a lot of new talent that's hidden. And that's what I've noticed in North America. I've been doing my own job of trying to go in and find where that talent is. But a lot of the new talent doesn't have a space, like we said, where they can be taught what they need to know. They can go online and they can learn how to produce online. They can get vocal coaches. They can figure a lot of stuff out online, but that's where it kind of stopped. And I think really, like you said, it's not just the UK pipeline, it's just the Punjabi music industry in general. We're not having new artists come out because our old artists aren't putting any effort into that. And even what I see with people like Garan Aujla, Diljit, great that they have all these money. And it's not just them, not just to single them out. For example, we've got a lot of older people. We've got Gippy Garewal, we've got Neeru Bajwa, we've got Amrinder Gill. These are just the ones that live in Canada that have huge amounts of money, following, influence, yet I don't see them doing anything to promote Punjabi arts and culture in Canada. I don't see them starting scholarships, starting their own schools, starting. There's so much more that these artists with huge, huge influences and power could be doing for our community. And I
But
think that
isn't that
struggle.
down to that they're scared of failure? Because I think what happens is that I think why some people move away from doing the kind of interviews and the media is that they kind of control their own narrative on their own channels. But I just see that's just a lack of understanding your art. Like
Yeah.
part of being in that eye is about giving as many interviews as you can. It is about becoming comfortable in front of the screen and knowing how to speak and what to say and when and owning the space rather than being scared of it and
Yeah.
seeing that any negative is as a failure because like you're not gonna have the perfect Instagram grid. It doesn't exist. It
And it is.
won't. It ain't there.
People understand the power of hate in our in the industry. Think about how much the Drake Kendrick controversy, which was purely fueled by hate, and how much people either hated Drake or hated Kendrick, how much that made them both even more influential in this space, and how long that went on. And what I think in the Punjabi community as well is the conversations, like you said, we're not having authentic conversations, and the teams aren't set up well. If you go to any artist in the Hollywood type space, they've got a PR specialist. They've got someone who helps them with these things. One of the other things I've noticed is even performing on stage, not a lot of the singers that are out right now translate onto an on-stage performance because they don't understand what stage presence is, what connecting with your audience is. And these are things that are all soft skills. And these soft skills, you need people around you to help build those. No person started off and was a star right away. It's very, very rare that someone comes into the picture and they just have star quality and everything that they do is right and everything they say is right. Most people have to go through media training, have a PR specialist who says, yes, these interviews are good for you, these ones are not, but you have to do them. That's how you build your audience. And it is, I don't see any of the artists going out there having conversations, connecting to people that are around them. Actually, I'll take that back. The one duo that I see that have been doing this are Jani and Moga. Jani and Moga in North America, at least, they've been going on podcasts, and this is why they have such a connection to their younger following because they're going to the places where their younger audience is.
And
Why do you think Sanktar and Icky, they've got they're using Sanktar's platform to talk about what Icky is doing, to talk about what Garan Aujla is doing. The audience and where these conversations need to be had has changed a lot. And the teams that are running these artist platforms have not changed. The artists are still working with the exact same thing. We're following the exact same formula without thinking about the fact that life is different now post-COVID, post even just the changes in the world. And I stand by of maybe this is just my biased opinion because I'm a woman, but I think in our Punjabi community, especially in our music industry, there's still a very big bias against women. Women aren't allowed at the table. Women aren't brought into these teams, these conversations. And I guarantee if there was a little bit of diversity of thought in those teams, and it could be having a woman or having someone from a different background, I've seen it, for example, on AP's team. AP doesn't have an all Punjabi team. He has people of different backgrounds that are helping him, that are promoting him, that are telling him what to do, and see how global his audience is, the type of work he's gotten, the spaces he's been into. The fact that AP was invited to be on the NBA All-Star series, or the celebrity series, sorry, is huge to me. And that's something that I don't think the regular audience necessarily sees, but that type of influence and understanding of general culture doesn't come from having the exact same type of person in the room
Yeah,
all the time.
but here's the question though: would AP then now? Would his team still recommend him to go and do brand media?
I don't know. And I don't think so, because and that's where it is, because he hasn't done it before. Why do it now?
Yeah,
Brown media really helps when you are an emerging artist, when you are connecting with your culture. AP, I think, is beyond the culture now. AP belongs to the world. And I see that with Diljit too. Diljit belongs to the world. Karan is on that cusp. Karan is about to belong to the world.
well, he's
And
just done Fallon, so I think he's gone.
yeah, I guess I think the threshold is passed now. You're right. He was on
Yeah,
Jimmy. Now he belongs to the
yeah.
world. But when you have artists who belong to the world, it's very different than them belonging to the culture. They don't have to. AP doesn't have to do brown media. He doesn't need it. He can do any media, and brown people will still see it. They'll see it more than them doing brown media. But other artists should be doing more brown media, and it is a even though they don't need it, they should still engage with it, because that's giving back to your community. And for myself, I'm like, I don't know if it's the mental health or the ADHD justice sensitivity in me, but I'm a really big believer that if you're making money off of something, you do have a duty to that. Just like in the workplace, like if I'm working for a company, I have a duty to fulfill my job description, whatever that looks like. As an artist, your job description and your duty is to your community and your culture, the people you're making the music for. If you're going to continuously you want brown kids to show up and pay to come to your concerts, what are you giving back to brown kids? Why should they support you if you're not supporting them and their futures? And I think that's something not just for artists, that's our whole community. I see it a lot in the older generation of there's a lot of talking and giving advice and telling what to do without any support or understanding of what's actually going on and what reality is like now.
Okay, I'm gonna bring it down to kind of one final question, and I'm gonna change this one because I asked the guest in every episode is there a bandwagon that they would like to jump on, jump off, or is there anything, if you can't think of anything for that, that they want to get off their chest for them to kind of use this space to do so?
Ooh, I think the bandwagon that I wish the industry would get on is authentic storytelling. I think authenticity and telling a good story goes such a long way. And I feel like our music and our community has come very far from that. And the closer we get to it, I think that's when our artistry starts to shine. That's when our culture starts to shine and our community starts to shine. And I don't think it's authentic storytelling just as big artists. I think that's every artist. If you're new and emerging, leaning into who you are goes a long way, and understanding that sometimes it's also okay to not know who you are, and that's what you need community for. And so it is for me. I think the bandwagon is realizing that everything is connected and you need community to be an artist, and the artist needs the community, and everyone needs to be supporting each other, and whatever that looks like. But I think change needs to happen. There's a lot of bandwagons we need to hop off of first before we hop onto the community bandwagon.
Yeah. No, I was my one. I just want to get into this. Is a combination of few. I've got into that weird kind of TikTok algorithm of where you start looking at nostalgia videos from like the 80s and 90s and stuff. And so like one or two is like, oh, I remember this, and then all of a sudden it starts getting you to more of a this nostalgic depression, and I'm like, oh, the life was a lot good from there. And there was a couple of bits that I heard on like radio of people getting people confirming their spaces, their places at weddings by giving a 50 quid transfer. So I started listening to that. There was also around obviously with the Punjab stuff, which was really, got me down a lot more than I thought you would down in that kind of state. And then you're in this really reflective mood, and I think it was I don't know how I got there, but I think the BBC Asian Network would do this ultimate kind of Asian #1 chart, this top 10 chart of songs. And so I was like, oh, let me have a look at this. So I'm going to, have a look around. And in the top 3, I think at #2 there was a song in the UK. There was this guy who came over. I said came over because I think his story was allegedly that he got sent back because he wasn't. I don't think he got the right paperwork. Let's put it that way. And it was the £1 fish song.
Oh,
Do you know that song?
I don't know if I do.
Lucky you. Just put it that way. And this got to #2, and I'm thinking, how has we're talking about erasing culture and all this kind of stuff. How has that got there? And even some of the other choices were questionable. But like the BBC have done nothing wrong. They've got to keep it open and transparent. And I just thought, I can't. It really, really bummed me out. It was the most weirdest thing that really just made me. And it's nothing to do with Asian. Fair play, well done. But I just thought people's musical education here, especially around for Bhangra, come on. There's just so many choices that could be kind of made there. And it weren't happening. And I thought, I don't know. It got me really, really down on that one. But I don't want to kind of leave it on a negative. Obviously, conversations like this, I feel, are really important as a kind of snapshot of time of where you said earlier on about with that critical kind of point. So it's always kind of remembering this is what the situation was, and this is where we took that kind of choice and where it went through. Mad. All right, Jessie, what you got coming up then? Just for anybody who as obviously wants to take an interest in what you're doing, what's your socials handles, and just kind of lay out what the next sort of 6 to 12 months looks like. Because before you say anything, we will be doing this on the regular because I think it's really good in terms of getting an insight of what's going on over there. We've got a few projects kind of lined up ourselves. Between us, which we'll share in due course. But go on, give us your kind of 6 to 12 months.
Yes, so Punjabi Beats Co is open. I have been sharing stories from the diaspora. We started off with some interviews with Ajati's son Jovan, little ex JB, as well as Kaka Penyawala's son Arsh Penyawala. Punjabi Beats Co on Instagram. Give us a follow. We are gearing up to start sharing more stories like the conversations we're having today. And as well, you can give me a follow on my personal account, which is Jessie Sidhu. But over the next 6 months, I'm working with a lot of people in North America and the UK to start having these conversations more and more. Like you said, mapping out what's been done. I think we really need to get it on paper, take over that algorithm and showcase that this history has been here for a long time. And we need to start giving the people their flowers. And then as well, I used to run a podcast called Presence of Mind, and we're going to revamp that and bring it back and showcase more arts and culture through that podcast as well. So like Ricky said, we're going to have a lot of cross collaboration. I'm going to be coming up to the UK in kind of November or December to do some more work in this space. But if there is anyone out there looking for a writer or just more insights in the Punjabi music or arts and culture community, I am always here as a resource and happy to help support teams as they need. Because I really do believe this is community work for me. It's not about me and getting me out there. I just really want to solidify the place that Punjabi music has in this world, and the people who have paved this path for us. I really want to make sure that they don't get forgotten along the way.
Yeah, and Jessie, we've had quite a lot of conversations and kind of back and forths and with ideas and things like that. But for people who listen to the podcast and most importantly trust the podcast, I'm telling you, what Jessie's saying is really, really important, and to really trust the movement in terms of what's coming up and doing it around. It's a learning experience. There will be mistakes made on the way for everybody. but it's important that we kind of feedback, and we're there to kind of help to go through as well. So our separate project will come out as well shortly, and if you guys get behind that, all I would say, the live tour will be getting prepped, and it's gonna happen. And we've already sort of confirmed a few bits, but it's be good. But the more you invest your time into your art, into things like Punjabi Beats Co, the bigger the scene can get, and you'll never know whether the people who you're supporting are gonna be those next Diljeets and Guttons and whoever the producers out there, and it's your chance to kind of give back. So I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you've got your day, your afternoon is about to start there in the West Coast. So ours is coming to an end here for the night, so I will be retiring after this. But really good to speak to you, and I really appreciate you taking the time out today.
Likewise, and I can't wait for many more conversations to come.
Cheers, Jessie.
Those